On Christmas Eve, in front of 200 guests, her husband handed her divorce papers. She was 7 months pregnant with his twins. Her best friend stood beside him, holding his hand, wearing the smile of a woman who had already won. His mother watched from across the room, cold and satisfied, like she had orchestrated the whole thing. Because she had. They threw her out into the freezing snow with nothing. $43 in her bank account. No family, no friends, no hope. They thought they had destroyed her.
Shows the money was
they thought she was just another woman
fund
who married above her station and learned her place.
Ms. Weston.
But here is what they did not know.
Oh, my
her mother
darlings.
had just died.
I'm so
And she
happy
left behind
to
a
see
secret
you.
that would change everything.
I love you both
A
so
secret
much.
worth millions. A secret that included every crime, every lie, and every skeleton the wealthy family had buried for decades. They wanted to erase her. Instead, they created the one person who would burn their empire to the ground. This is the story of Emma Callahan, a woman who lost everything on the worst night of her life and came back to take it all. Stay with me until the end, because the twist in this story, you will never see it coming. The snow fell softly outside the ballroom windows, each flake catching the light from 1,000 crystal chandeliers. Inside the Weston estate, 200 guests in designer gowns and tailored suits raised champagne glasses, their laughter echoing off marble floors that had been polished to mirror perfection. Emma Callahan stood in the corner, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, watching her husband work the room. 7 months along with twins, she felt enormous in the navy dress she had chosen so carefully that morning. Grant had not commented on how she looked. He rarely did anymore. She should have felt beautiful. She should have felt like she belonged. After 3 years of marriage, she still felt like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Grant caught her eye across the room and smiled. That smile used to make her heart race. Now it just made her nervous. Something was wrong tonight. She could feel it in the way his mother kept glancing at her, in the way Chelsea kept whispering to the other guests, in the way the room seemed to pulse with an energy she could not name. Her best friend since college, Chelsea Morgan, had arrived an hour ago in a stunning red dress that probably cost more than Emma used to make in a month as a nurse. Chelsea had hugged her warmly, told her she looked radiant, and then drifted away to stand suspiciously close to Grant. Emma told herself she was imagining things. She was hormonal, pregnant, paranoid. She was wrong about all of it. At exactly 9:15, Vivian Weston clinked a silver spoon against her crystal glass. The room fell silent immediately. Vivian commanded that kind of respect, the kind that came from decades of wielding money like a weapon. "Thank you all for joining us on this special evening," Vivian said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the ballroom. Christmas is a time for family, for honesty, and tonight we have some important news to share. Emma felt her stomach clench. The twins kicked as if they sensed her sudden fear. Vivian continued, her eyes finding Emma across the room. "As many of you know, my son, Preston, married rather quickly 3 years ago. Young love, we all said. How romantic. But as time has passed, certain realities have become clear." Emma's legs began to shake. She looked at Grant, desperate for reassurance, but he would not meet her eyes. "Marriage requires compatibility," Vivian said. "Shared values, a mutual understanding of what it means to be part of a family like ours. Unfortunately, not every marriage is built to last." Grant stepped forward then, pulling something from his jacket pocket. An envelope. White, crisp, final. He walked toward Emma slowly, deliberately, his face arranged into an expression she had never seen before. Cold, distant, rehearsed. When he reached her, he held out the envelope. "What is this?" Emma whispered, but she already knew. Some part of her had always known this moment was coming. "Open it," Grant said quietly. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. She could feel every eye in the room on her, watching, waiting, enjoying the spectacle. She pulled out the papers inside and read the first line. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The words blurred. Her vision swam. "You are divorcing me," she breathed. "I am 7 months pregnant with your children." "It is for the best," Grant said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "For everyone." "For everyone?" Emma's voice cracked. She looked around the room, desperate for someone to say something, to defend her, to tell her this was all a terrible joke. But they all just stared. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked curious. Most looked entertained. This was a show. She was the show. Sign the papers, Vivian said, stepping forward. We have prepared a generous settlement. You will leave tonight with what you brought into this marriage. Nothing more, nothing less. Emma felt the room spinning. I did not bring nothing. I brought love. I brought loyalty. I brought 3 years of trying to make your son happy. And yet, Vivian said with a thin smile, here we are. That was when Chelsea stepped forward. Emma watched in horror as her best friend walked to Grant's side, slipping her hand into his like it was the most natural thing in the world. No, Emma breathed. Chelsea, no. I am sorry, Emma, Chelsea said, her voice gentle but firm. Grant and I understand each other. We are from the same world. You were always going to be a visitor here. The betrayal hit Emma like a physical blow. How long, she whispered. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? The room gasped. Chelsea's expression did not change. Does it matter? Yes, Emma said, her voice breaking. It matters to me. Chelsea sighed like Emma was being difficult. A few months, maybe longer. I do not keep track. Emma felt something inside her shatter. Not break, shatter into a million pieces that could never be put back together. Security will escort you out, Vivian announced Edwin. You have 1 hour to pack your things. Anything you leave behind will be disposed of. Emma looked at Grant one last time. You promised me, she said, her voice hollow. You promised I would never be humiliated again. He said nothing, just looked at her with those blank eyes. And that silence was somehow worse than anything he could have said. Emma turned and walked toward the stairs, every step an act of will. She could feel them all watching, judging, enjoying the destruction of a woman who had dared to believe she deserved better. She made it to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. Then she collapsed against the wall, her hands on her stomach, feeling her babies move inside her. She had lost everything. Her husband, her best friend, her home, her dignity, everything. Through the window, she could see the snow still falling, beautiful and cold and indifferent to her pain. 1 hour later, Emma walked out of the Weston estate with a single suitcase and $43 in her bank account. The party was still going. They had already moved on, already celebrating, already erasing her. She stood on the steps, watching the lights and laughter through the windows, and made herself a promise. They thought they had destroyed her. They thought they had won, but they had no idea what they had just done. 3 years earlier, Emma Callahan had believed in fairy tales. Not the kind with glass slippers and pumpkin carriages. The kind where a good person, a decent person, could find love and build a life that meant something. She had grown up in Columbus, Ohio, the daughter of a firefighter and a traveling nurse. Her father had died when she was 19, rushing into a burning building to save a child who was not even there. The call had been a prank. He had died for nothing. Her mother, Ruth, had held them together through sheer will, working double shifts, picking up extra contracts, somehow managing to send Emma to nursing school while never once complaining about her own exhaustion. Emma had inherited her father's stubbornness and her mother's quiet strength. She became a pediatric nurse, not because it paid well, but because she believed in helping people. She believed that small acts of kindness could change the world. That belief was tested the night she met Grant Weston. She was working a hospital fundraiser, not attending. The caterer was short-staffed, and Emma had volunteered to help pass hors d'oeuvres during her break. She was wearing scrubs under her apron, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, looking nothing like the elegant women gliding through the ballroom. Grant had approached her anyway. You do not look like you belong here, he said, leaning against the bar beside her, a champagne glass in his hand. Emma turned, startled. Excuse me? That is a compliment, he said, his smile widening. Everyone here is pretending. You are not. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just looked at him, studied him. He was handsome in that polished catalog kind of way. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, an expensive suit that fit like it was sewn onto his body. But it was his voice that got her. Warm, interested, like he genuinely cared what she had to say. I am Grant, he said, extending a hand. Tell me, Emma, what brings someone like you to a place like this? She hesitated. I work here, in the hospital. I am a nurse. A nurse, no. He tilted his head, studying her like she was fascinating. That is real work, important work, not like these people who shuffle money around and pretend it matters. They talked for an hour, then two. By the end of the night, Grant had her number. By the end of the month, they were dating. By the end of the year, he proposed. It happened fast. Too fast, maybe. But Emma did not question it. She wanted to believe. She needed to believe. Her mother was less convinced. At the wedding, small and elegant at the Weston estate, Ruth pulled Emma aside during the reception. Her eyes were serious in a way Emma rarely saw. "Baby, I want you to be happy," Ruth said. "But remember what I taught you. Always have your own money, your own exit. Promise me." "Mom, Grant is not like that. They never are." Ruth's smile was sad. "Until they are." She pressed an envelope into Emma's hands. "Do not open this until you need it. You will know when." Emma laughed it off, tucked the envelope into a box of keepsakes, and forgot about it. She was too busy being in love to hear the warnings. The trouble started slowly, almost imperceptibly. A comment here, a look there, small cuts that barely bled. Vivian Weston made her opinions clear from the first morning Emma woke up in the family estate. "Your mother," Vivian said over breakfast, her voice dripping with false interest. "She is a traveling nurse, you said? How adventurous. And your father was a firefighter? So your family's tradition is serving others?" "We believe in helping people," Emma said carefully. "How noble." Vivian's smile did not reach her eyes. "Though I suppose when you have nothing else to offer, service becomes a virtue out of necessity." Emma felt the cut but stayed polite. Grant said nothing. He never said anything. The months passed. Vivian's cruelty intensified. She rearranged Emma's kitchen without asking, gifted her diet books when Emma gained pregnancy weight, invited her to lunches with society friends who asked gentle questions about Emma's quaint background. Emma tried to talk to Grant about it, but he always waved her off. "She is just protective," he would say. "Give her time." But time was not softening Vivian, it was emboldening her. Emma started keeping a journal. She called it documentation, but really it was survival. Writing down every slight, every insult, every moment that made her feel less than human. A friend at work, an older nurse named Barbara, noticed Emma's exhaustion one day. "Honey, you look like you are carrying the weight of the world," Barbara said. "Not just those babies." "It is my mother-in-law," Emma admitted. "She makes me feel like I am never good enough." Barbara nodded knowingly. When a rich man chases a nurse, you have to ask yourself, does he want a partner or a caretaker? There is a difference. Emma did not want to believe it. But late at night, when Grant came home smelling of whiskey and avoided her questions about where he had been, she started to wonder. She discovered she was having twins on a Tuesday afternoon. The ultrasound technician smiled warmly as she pointed out 2 heartbeats, 2 healthy babies growing inside her. Emma cried with joy. She could not wait to tell Grant. But when she found him that evening, his reaction was not what she expected. "Are you sure?" he asked, his face blank. "I took the test. I had the ultrasound. I am sure." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the bedroom. "Okay, okay, we will figure this out." "Figure it out," Emma's voice cracked. "Grant, we are having a baby, our babies." He stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. And for a moment she saw something in his eyes that terrified her. "Regret. I know," he said quietly. "I just need to tell my mother." That night, Emma lay awake, feeling her babies move inside her, and wondered when exactly the fairy tale had started to curdle. She should have run then. She should have listened to her mother, to Barbara, to the voice in her own head that screamed something was very wrong. But she stayed, because she loved him, because she believed love could fix anything. That was her first mistake. It would not be her last. Emma's mother collapsed on a Tuesday morning. The call came while Emma was folding baby clothes she had bought with the last of her personal savings. Tiny onesies in yellow and green, because she did not know yet if she was having boys or girls. Her phone rang and something in her chest tightened before she even answered. Heart failure, the doctor said. She needed emergency surgery and the cost was staggering. $80,000 not covered by insurance. Emma's father had been dead for 13 years. There was no savings, no backup plan, no siblings to share the burden. Just Emma and the wealthy family she had married into. A family worth over $100 million. A family that spent more on flowers for their Christmas party than her mother's surgery would cost. She went to Grant immediately, tears streaming down her face, her hands pressed against her pregnant belly like she was holding herself together. Please, she begged. I am not asking for us. I am asking for my mother's life. I will pay it back. I will work. I will do anything. Please, Grant. She is the only family I have left. Grant looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot, glancing at his phone like he was expecting a more important call. I will talk to my mother. No, Emma's voice came out stronger than she expected. I am talking to you. You are my husband. We stood in front of Anne and our families, and you promised to love me. This is what love looks like, Grant. This is the test, that says. He sighed, rubbing his temples like she was giving him a headache. Emma, it is not that simple. It is exactly that simple. She needs help. We can help her. Your mother spent $60,000 on a handbag last month. I saw the receipt. $60,000 cost for something to carry her lipstick. And you are telling me we cannot find $80,000 to save a human life. Grant's voice turned sharp. Emma, this is my family's money, not ours. She stepped back like he had slapped her. The babies kicked hard as if they felt her shock. What did you just say? You signed the agreement. You know how this works. I signed that agreement because you told me it was nothing. You said it was just paperwork, a formality. You looked me in the eyes and lied to me. I did not lie. I simplified. Emma felt something cold spreading through her chest. You simplified me out of my rights while telling me you loved me. That is not simplifying. That is manipulation. Grant said nothing, just looked at her with that same blank expression that was becoming terrifyingly familiar. The expression of a man who had already made his choice and was just waiting for her to accept it. She went to Vivian next, desperate, humiliated, but desperate. There is a particular kind of shame that comes from begging someone who hates you. Emma felt it burning in her throat as she stood in Vivian's pristine office, surrounded by photos of charity galas and magazine covers featuring Vivian's philanthropic work. The irony was not lost on her. This woman who built her reputation on helping others could not spare a fraction of her fortune for her own daughter-in-law's dying mother. Please, Emma begged. My mother is dying. She needs surgery. I am not asking for charity. I will pay you back. I will sign whatever you want. I will work for free. Just please help her. She is 58 years old. She has never asked anyone for anything. She spent her whole life taking care of other people, and now she needs someone to take care of her. Vivian did not even look up from her desk. She continued signing some papers, her pen scratching across the pages like Emma was not even there. Your mother's medical situation is not my concern. She is going to die. Do you understand that? Without this surgery, she will die. People die every day, Emma. That is not my problem. Something inside Emma cracked, not broke. Cracked, like ice on a frozen lake, fractures spreading in every direction. You donate millions to hospitals, she said, her voice shaking. You have buildings named after you. You gave a speech last month about the importance of healthcare access for working families. My mother is a working family, Vivian. She has been a nurse for 35 years. She has saved more lives than your donations ever will. And you are going to let her die because of what? Because I am not good enough for your son? Vivian finally looked up, her expression cold and satisfied, like a cat watching a mouse realize there was no escape. I am a realist, Emma, and reality is this. Your mother is not my responsibility. Neither are you, for that matter. The only reason you are still here is because you are carrying my son's children. But make no mistake, the moment those babies are born, you become expendable. So I suggest you start planning accordingly. Emma left that office knowing the truth. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. And the people she had trusted to love her were counting the days until they could throw her away. 3 days later, her phone rang at 4 in the morning. Emma knew before she answered. She knew the way you always know when the worst thing happens. Her body understood before her mind caught up. Ruth Callahan had died in her sleep, alone in her hospital bed, 3 states away from her only daughter. The nurse on the phone was kind. She said Ruth had not suffered. She said Ruth had been holding a photo of Emma when they found her. Emma did not cry. She could not. There were no tears left. She just sat in the darkness of the bedroom she shared with the husband who did not love her, feeling her baby's kick, wondering what kind of world she was bringing them into. Grant did not come to the funeral. Work emergency, he said. His voice did not even sound guilty anymore. Emma stood at her mother's grave, the only mourner, rain soaking through her black dress, her pregnant belly making it hard to bend down and place the flowers. "I am sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I am sorry I did not listen. I am sorry I chose him over you. I am sorry I was not there." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the old oak tree that shaded the cemetery, and Emma could have sworn she heard her mother's voice, soft and certain, carried on the breeze. "You are going to survive this, baby girl. You are stronger than you know." Emma stood there for a long time, rain mixing with the tears she finally allowed herself to cry. "I will not let them break me, Mom. I will not let them win." But even as she said the words, she was not sure she believed them. The months that followed were a blur of survival. Emma retreated into herself, focusing on the pregnancy, trying to avoid Vivian's cruelty, trying to believe that things would get better once the babies arrived. They would not. She started noticing things, little things that did not add up. Grant coming home late with no explanation. Perfume on his collar that was not hers. Whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room. Chelsea visiting more often, always when Emma was not supposed to be home. Chelsea, her best friend since freshman year of college. The woman who had held her hand through her father's funeral. The maid of honor at her wedding who had cried happy tears and sworn they would be friends forever. One afternoon, Emma came home early from a doctor's appointment and heard laughter from the sitting room. She recognized Grant's voice, and then she heard another voice, Chelsea's voice, warm, intimate, the way you only sound with someone you have touched. Emma pushed open the door. Grant and Chelsea were sitting on the couch, his arm draped casually around her shoulders, their faces inches apart. They looked up, startled, and in that moment of surprise, Emma saw everything. The guilt, the panic, the briefest flash of satisfaction in Chelsea's eyes before she masked it. "Emma," Chelsea said, standing quickly, smoothing her skirt, "I did not know you would be home so soon." "Clearly," Emma said, her voice hollow. "How long?" Grant stood too, smoothing his shirt. "Chelsea stopped by to drop off some documents for my mother. It is not what it looks like." "How long?" Chelsea's smile faltered. "Emma, you are being dramatic. We are friends. You know that. I know what I saw. How long have you been sleeping with my husband?" Nobody answered. The silence was its own confession. Chelsea smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I should go. I will call you later, Emma." She kissed Emma on the cheek as she left. The touch felt like a brand, like Chelsea was marking her territory. That night, Emma could not sleep. She lay beside Grant, staring at the ceiling, feeling her babies move inside her, knowing in her bones that everything she had believed was a lie. She should have confronted him then, should have demanded answers, should have packed her bags and left. But where would she go? She had no money, no family, no friends she could trust. She was trapped in a gilded cage, and the door was slowly closing. The envelope her mother had given her on her wedding day sat unopened in a box in her closet. She thought about it sometimes, wondered what was inside, but she was not ready to admit that her mother had been right all along. Not yet. The final weeks before Christmas passed in a haze. Vivian planned the annual party with military precision. Emma was told where to stand, what to wear, how to smile. She was a prop, a decoration, a problem that would soon be solved. On Christmas Eve, Emma woke up with a feeling of dread so heavy she could barely breathe. "Something is wrong," she told Grant as he dressed for the party. "I can feel it." "You are being paranoid," he said without looking at her. "Hormones. It will pass." It did not pass. That night, standing in the ballroom, watching her husband hand her divorce papers in front of 200 strangers, Emma finally understood. Her mother had been right about everything, and now it was too late. Emma gave birth to her twins 6 weeks after Christmas Eve, alone in a county hospital. No husband holding her hand, no mother coaching her through contractions, no best friend bringing ice chips and bad jokes. Just 2 nurses who looked at her with pity she did not want, and a body that was tearing itself apart to bring new life into a world that had given her nothing but pain. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of screaming until her throat was raw. 14 hours of gripping the bed rails so hard her knuckles went white and her hands cramped. 14 hours of wondering if she was going to die here, alone with no one to raise her children. At hour 10, when the pain was so bad she could barely breathe, she started talking to her mother. "I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have run when you told me to run. I was so stupid. I thought love would be enough. I thought if I just loved him hard enough, he would love me back." The nurse checking her monitors pretended not to hear. "You were right about everything," Emma continued, tears streaming down her face. "You were right and I did not listen. And now I am alone and I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to be a mother without you. I do not know how to survive." The contraction peaked, a wave of agony that whited out everything else. And in that moment of absolute pain, Emma heard her mother's voice. Clear as a bell, strong as steel, "You push. That is how you survive. You push until you cannot push anymore, and then you push again. That is what mothers do. That is what I did. That is what you will do." Emma pushed. When they finally placed the babies in her arms, a boy and a girl, she looked down at their tiny faces and felt something crack open inside her chest. Not break. Open. Like a door she did not know existed. Like a room in her heart that had been waiting her whole life for these two small miracles. "What are their names?" the nurse asked gently. Emma looked at her son, his face scrunched and red, already fighting the world. "Jack," she said, "after my father. He was a firefighter. He died saving a child who was not even there. The call was a prank. He ran into a burning building because he could not stand by while someone might be suffering." Then she looked at her daughter, smaller than her brother, but somehow fiercer. Her tiny fist already raised like she was ready to take on anyone who threatened her. "Lily, after my mother. She was a nurse for 35 years. She never made more than $50,000 a year, but she treated every patient like they were family. She died trying to get to me. Her heart gave out because she was trying to survive surgery so she could meet her grandchildren." The nurse wiped her eyes. "Those are beautiful names, strong names. They will need to be strong," Emma said softly, "because I am going to teach them that no one gets to decide their worth. No one gets to throw them away. No one gets to make them feel small." The hospital discharged her after 2 days. Standard procedure for uncomplicated births, they said. Never mind that she had nowhere to go. The women's transitional shelter she had found through a church outreach program was not what she expected. It was not a dirty place, not the nightmare she had imagined, just a clean, shared apartment with thin walls and other women who understood pain without needing it, explained. Women like Destiny, 23, who had left an abusive husband and was working 2 jobs to save for an apartment. Women like Margaret, 54, who had lost everything to a gambling, addicted husband who had forged her signature on their mortgage. Women like Keisha, 19, eyeing out of foster care with nothing but determination and a GED. These women did not ask Emma where she came from. They did not judge her for marrying rich or getting thrown out. They just passed her diapers when she ran out and held her babies when she needed to shower, and sat with her in the common room at 3 a.m. when the darkness felt too heavy to bear alone. This, Emma realized, was what real community looked like. Not the charity galas with their champagne and fake smiles. This raw, exhausted, beautiful sisterhood of women who had nothing left to give, but gave anyway. Pastor Linda Brooks ran the program. She was in her 50s, built like a woman who had fought every battle life could throw and won most of them. No nonsense, warm eyes that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by any of it. The kind of faith that showed in actions, not just words. "How are you holding up, baby?" Pastor Linda asked during Emma's first week, finding her in the kitchen at 2 a.m. with a screaming Jack. "I have not slept in 4 days. I smell like spit up. My nipples are bleeding from nursing. I just cried for 20 minutes because I dropped a Cheerio and did not have the energy to pick it up. So, great." Pastor Linda smiled and took Jack from her arms with the easy confidence of a woman who had raised 5 children and fostered 12 more. "That is not weakness, honey. That is motherhood. You are doing it alone, and you are still standing. You are still fighting. That is strength most people never find because they never get tested like this." She settled Jack against her shoulder, rubbing his back in slow circles that somehow worked better than anything Emma had tried. Listen to me. Before you make any big decisions, any legal moves, any revenge plans, you take care of yourself first. Eat, sleep, get a routine, because you cannot fight from empty. Every woman who has survived what you are going through will tell you the same thing. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you sure as hell cannot win a war on no sleep. Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue. Pastor Linda continued, her voice dropping lower, more serious. And one more thing. When the anger comes, and it will come, you do not let it poison you. Anger is fuel. It can power your engine or burn down your house. You get to choose which one. You understand me? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now go sleep. I have got this one for a few hours. Emma did not argue. She crawled into her narrow bed in their shared room and slept for the first time in days. The weeks blurred together, feeding, changing, soothing. 3 a.m. walks around the small apartment, humming lullabies her mother used to sing. She learned to function on 4 hours of sleep, learned to eat with one hand while holding a baby in the other, learned that survival was not a feeling. It was a choice you made every single hour. She learned other things too, practical things. The other women taught her what they knew. Destiny showed her how to stretch a pack of diapers by sizing up early. Margaret taught her how to freeze breast milk in ice cube trays for easy portions. Keisha helped her apply for every assistance program available, navigating the bureaucracy with the expertise of someone who had grown up in the system. You think asking for help makes you weak, Keisha said one afternoon while they sorted donated baby clothes together. It does not. Knowing what resources exist and using them, that is smart. That is survival. The only people who think using assistance is shameful are people who have never needed it. Emma remembered Vivian's face. The contempt, the absolute certainty that Emma was beneath her. You are right, Emma said. I spent 3 years trying to fit into a world that was designed to exclude me, trying to earn acceptance from people who had already decided I did not deserve it. I am done trying to earn anything from anyone. That is the spirit, Keisha grinned. Now help me sort these onesies. Someone donated a whole bag of designer stuff. Probably some rich lady cleaning out her closet to make room for more designer stuff. Emma looked at the labels. She recognized them. They were the same brands Vivian bought. The irony was not lost on her. One night at 3 in the morning, she sat rocking Jack while Lily slept in the next room. Through the thin walls, she could hear Margaret crying quietly. Down the hall, someone else's baby fussed. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed. This was her life now, not the mansion with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, not the charity galas and designer gowns. This small room, these thin walls, these women who understood her pain because they carried their own. Emma looked down at her son, his tiny fingers curled around her thumb, and felt something shift. Something that had been building since the moment she walked out of the Weston estate. Not just survival, something stronger, something with teeth. You know, your father's family has a night nanny, a day nanny, and a backup nanny, she whispered. I have dry shampoo and spite. Guess which one is more effective? Jack gurgled, which she chose to interpret as agreement. Your grandmother Ruth, Emma continued softly, she used to say that hard times show you who people really are. I think she was right. Your father showed me who he was. Your grandmother Vivian showed me who she was. Chelsea showed me who she was. And I showed myself who I was too. I showed myself that I can survive anything, that I can lose everything and still get up, that I can be broken and still fight. She kissed his forehead, feeling his warmth against her lips. You will never know what it feels like to be thrown away. I promise you that. You will never beg for help from people who enjoy watching you suffer. You will never feel worthless because someone with money decided you were not good enough. I am going to build a life for us, a real life, and no one is ever going to take it from us. She was still smiling when her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Emma, this is Marcus Webb, your mother's attorney. We need to meet, urgently. It concerns your mother's estate and instructions she left for you. Estate. Her mother did not have an estate. Her mother had died in debt, alone in a hospital bed she could not afford. But something about the message made Emma pause. Her mother had been a planner, a saver, A woman who thought 10 steps ahead while pretending she could barely manage one. And there was still that envelope, the one Ruth had pressed into her hands on her wedding day with tears in her eyes. Do not open this until you need it. You will know when. Emma looked at her sleeping son, looked at the thin walls of the shelter, looked at the life she was trying to build from the ashes of everything she had lost. Maybe now was when. 2 days later, she sat across from Marcus Webb in his small, cluttered law office. He was in his late 50s, gray-haired, with kind eyes and the perpetually rumpled look of a man who cared more about truth than appearances. The office was nothing like the sleek conference room she had seen in the Weston building. No marble, no mahogany, just overstuffed filing cabinets, stacks of paper on every surface, and a coffee maker that looked older than Emma. I have been trying to reach you for weeks, Marcus said. Your mother gave me strict instructions about when to make contact. Very specific instructions. Instructions about what? About her estate. Emma shook her head. My mother did not have an estate, Mr. Webb. She worked as a nurse her whole life. She died with medical debt she could not pay. I could not even afford to fly to her funeral. I took a bus, a 12-hour bus ride while I was 7 months pregnant because I did not have money for a plane ticket. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Emma, your mother was more than she appeared, much more. She spent 30 years building something. Quietly, carefully, under a different name, using investment accounts she never told anyone about. Not even you. He slid a folder across the desk. Open it. Emma's hands trembled as she took the folder. The paper felt heavy, important, like it contained something that would change everything in writing. She opened it. The numbers inside made no sense. Rental properties in 3 states. Index funds started when Emma was a baby. A life insurance policy she never knew existed. Dividend payments going back decades. The total at the bottom, $2.3 million. Emma's vision blurred. She read the number again and again, waiting for it to change, waiting for the decimal point to move. It did not. That is impossible, she breathed. I would have known. She would have told me. When I begged for money for her surgery, she could have said something. She could have just paid for it herself. She did not want you to know, Marcus said gently. Not yet. She believed wealth could corrupt people, make them targets. She wanted you to live a normal life, find love for the right reasons, build character through struggle. Emma's hands were shaking so hard the papers rattled. Build character through struggle? She watched me get thrown out. She knew I was living in a shelter with newborn twins. And she said nothing? She could not say anything. The trust had conditions. What conditions? Marcus took a deep breath. The inheritance could only be released after you were officially divorced. Your mother set it up that way 15 years ago, and she updated it regularly. The last update was made 3 weeks before she died. She knew, Emma. She knew what was coming. Emma felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. She gripped the edge of Marcus's desk to steady herself. Why would she do that? Why would she let me suffer? Because she knew you would suffer more if you got this money while married. The Westons would have found a way to take it. Their lawyers would have claimed it should have been disclosed. Grant would have had rights to half. Vivian would have used it as leverage. Marcus leaned forward, his voice soft with something that sounded like respect. Your mother was brilliant, Emma. She grew up poor. She watched wealthy people destroy others her entire career. Patients who lost everything because of spouse hit assets. Families torn apart by inheritance disputes. She swore she would never let that happen to you. So she made herself invisible. Lived on $40,000 a year while earning twice that. Invested every penny she could spare into accounts under different names. And she waited. For 15 years she waited, praying you would never need any of it. Tears streamed down Emma's face. She let me beg Vivian for $80,000 while she had millions. She let me think I was completely alone. She sacrificed her own comfort to protect you, Marcus said. The hardest kind of love there is, watching someone you love suffer because you know rescuing them would make things worse. He pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. And she left you something else, Emma, something even more valuable than money. What? Information. Your mother did not just save money, she investigated the Westons. For years. From the moment you started dating Grant, she started digging. She never trusted them. and she wanted to make sure that if they ever hurt you, you would have the weapons to fight back. Emma stared at the folder, afraid to open it, like it contained something that once seen could never be unseen. What is in there? Everything. Financial records, shell companies, suspicious transactions, connections to people who have disappeared from their lives. Your mother called it her insurance policy. She said if you ever needed to take them down, this would be the blueprint. She updated it 3 weeks before she died. Even when her heart was failing, she was still gathering information. Still protecting you, still fighting for you. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her mother's love pressing down on her like a physical force. Like Ruth was standing right behind her, hands on her shoulders, whispering in her ear, "You can do this, baby girl. I gave you everything you need. Now show them who you really are." Emma opened her eyes, looked at the folders, looked at Marcus, looked at the life she thought she had lost. Ruth Callahan had known. From the very beginning, she had known. And she had spent the last 15 years of her life preparing for this moment, not because she wanted Emma to suffer, because she knew Emma would need to be strong, would need to face the worst before she could become her best. And now, sitting in this cramped office with $2.3 million and a folder full of the Weston family's darkest secrets, Emma finally understood. Her mother had not abandoned her. Her mother had given her an army, and Emma was finally ready to use it. Emma spent the next 6 months learning how to fight, not with fists, not with screaming matches or public confrontations, with something far more dangerous: information, strategy, the cold, patient precision her mother had mastered over 30 years of watching wealthy people destroy everyone around them. She learned that anger was not enough, grief was not enough, even love was not enough. You needed leverage. You needed proof. You needed to understand your enemy better than they understood themselves. And then you needed to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Marcus became her mentor, guiding her through the legal maze of the Western Empire. He was patient with her questions, even the stupid ones. Even when she called him at midnight because she had found something in the files and could not wait until morning. "Your mother would be proud," he said one night when she correctly identified a shell company the Westons had used to hide assets. "She always said you were smarter than you gave yourself credit for." "She never told me that," Emma replied. "She told everyone except you. That is how mothers are sometimes. We save the truth for everyone but the people who need to hear it most." Emma took an online paralegal course, studying late into the night after the twins were asleep. She learned to read financial statements, to trace shell companies, to spot the patterns that indicated fraud. She learned the language of money, the way rich people talked in code to hide their crimes. She discovered that the Westons were not just cruel. They were criminals, sophisticated, well-protected criminals with lawyers and accountants and politicians in their pockets, but criminals nonetheless. Vivian's charity foundation, the Weston Foundation for Community Development, was a masterpiece of corruption. On paper, it looked perfect. Glamorous galas, celebrity endorsements, magazine covers featuring Vivian with underprivileged children, her smile as warm as her heart was cold. In reality, it was a money laundering operation disguised as philanthropy, fake donors who did not exist, inflated expenses for events that never happened, money transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, routed through so many shell companies that tracing them took Emma 3 weeks. Over $15 million stolen from people who thought they were helping underprivileged children. $15 million that should have gone to schools and hospitals and food banks, funneled instead into Vivian's personal accounts. The audacity of it stunned Emma. The woman had accepted awards for her charitable work, given speeches about giving back, been honored by the mayor, the governor, 2 senators, and the whole time she had been stealing from the poor to enrich herself. Grant was no better. His gambling addiction had spiraled out of control after his father's death. The grief he never dealt with, the pressure of living up to the Weston name, the empty void where his conscience should have been. He filled it all with cards and dice in the desperate hope that one more bet would fix everything. It never did. He had embezzled from his own company to cover his losses. Small amounts at first, then larger, then amounts so staggering that Emma had to read the numbers 3 times to believe them. When the company money ran out, he borrowed from increasingly dangerous people. Loan sharks, organized crime, Men who did not file lawsuits when you failed to pay, men who sent other kinds of messages. And Chelsea? Chelsea was not just a betrayer. She was a plant. Emma discovered the truth through Maria Gonzalez, a former Weston housekeeper who had been fired for refusing to lie about Emma's supposed instability during the custody evaluation. Maria was 62, a grandmother 5 times over, and she had worked for the Westons for 11 years before Vivian demanded she sign a statement saying Emma was mentally unfit to raise children. I told her no, Maria said during their secret meeting at a coffee shop on the far side of the city. I told her I would not lie for her. I have seen a lot of things in that house, Mrs. Callahan. Things that would make your hair stand up. But lying to take children from their mother? That I would not do. Not for any amount of money. Emma reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you, you have no idea what that means. Maria squeezed back. Your mother helped my sister once. Did you know that? Years ago, when my sister was in the hospital and could not afford her medication, a nurse named Ruth made some calls, found a program, got everything covered. My sister never forgot, and neither did I. Emma felt tears building. She blinked them back. That sounds like my mom. She was a good woman, and she raised a good daughter. Maria leaned closer, her voice dropping. Now let me tell you about Chelsea Morgan. The story Maria told made Emma's blood run cold. The woman Chelsea, Maria said. She was on Mrs. Weston's payroll for 2 years before you even met Mr. Grant. They found her in college. Scholarship girl from a trailer park in Kentucky. Smart, ambitious, desperate to escape her past. Mrs. Weston saw that desperation and used it. Used it how? She paid for everything, tuition, books, a new wardrobe, an apartment near campus. And in exchange, Chelsea reported on the women Grant dated, watched them, evaluated them, told Mrs. Weston everything. Emma felt sick. She was never my friend. She was your handler, Maria said flatly. Her job was to watch you, report back, find your weaknesses, and when the time was right, replace you. Mrs. Weston has been planning this for years, Mrs. Callahan. From the moment Grant brought you home, she was planning how to get rid of you. Emma stared at her coffee, feeling the last remnants of her old life crumbling away. Every late-night study session, every tearful confession, every girl's trip and birthday celebration and heart-to-heart conversation. All of it had been surveillance. All of it had been data collection. Her best friend had been a spy, and Emma had handed over every secret she had. But instead of breaking her, the truth made her stronger. They think I am weak, Emma said quietly. They think they destroyed me. They underestimated you, Maria said. Your mother told me once, years ago. She said you were tougher than you knew. She said you just needed a reason to fight. Do you have that reason now? Emma thought of Jack and Lily, their tiny fingers, their perfect faces, the weight of them in her arms and the terror of losing them forever. I have 2 of them, Emma replied, and I am going to burn their world to the ground. She started fighting smart, small moves that would not raise alarms, nothing flashy, nothing that would tip them off. She acquired tiny stakes in companies connected to the Western Empire through carefully constructed shell companies Marcus helped her establish. 2% here, 3% there, never enough to require public disclosure, never enough to draw attention, but enough to give her access to shareholder meetings, enough to see financial documents, enough to ask questions that made accountants nervous. She documented every irregularity, every suspicious transaction, every lie. She built a database, cross-referenced everything, created timelines showing exactly how the money flowed from legitimate donations to offshore accounts. She also started rebuilding her own life. Found a part-time job at a law firm through Marcus's connections. Nothing glamorous, filing, research, coffee runs, but it was legitimate work, and it gave her access to legal databases she needed for her investigation. She moved into a small but clean apartment, 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a view of a parking lot, but it was hers. She paid the rent herself. No one could take it away. She put the twins in a modest daycare. It was not the exclusive Montessori program the Weston children attended, but the teachers were kind, the facility was clean, and Jack and Lily were learning to socialize with other children. With normal children. Children who would not grow up thinking money made them better than everyone else. Pastor Linda continued to check in, offering wisdom that Emma desperately needed. "I see that fire in your eyes," Pastor Linda said one afternoon, watching Emma type furiously on her laptop while the twins napped. "That is good. Fire gets things done. But remember, honey, revenge and justice are not the same thing." Emma looked up. "What is the difference?" "Revenge is about making them feel what you felt. It is about pain for the sake of pain. It is about watching them suffer and feeling satisfied." Pastor Linda sat down across from her. "Justice is about making sure they can never do it to anyone else. It is about protecting the next woman, the next family, the next victim." Emma was quiet for a moment. "What if I want both?" Pastor Linda smiled. "Then you make sure you get justice first. The revenge will follow naturally. But if you put revenge first, you might lose everything, including yourself." Emma nodded, but she was not sure she could tell the difference anymore. Some nights, lying awake while the twins slept, she fantasized about Vivian's face when she realized everything was crumbling, about Grant understanding too late what he had thrown away, about Chelsea discovering that the mother she had served so faithfully had never really loved her at all. But other nights, she just wanted peace, a life where she never had to think about the Westons again, a future where her children could grow up without shadows. Those nights were getting rarer. The first real victory came unexpectedly. A journalist named Sarah Chen had started asking questions about the Weston Foundation. She worked for a regional newspaper, not one of the big national outlets, but she had a reputation for thorough investigation, and she did not scare easily. Someone had sent her anonymous tips, documented evidence of financial irregularities, copies of tax returns that did not match public filings, names of donors who did not exist. Emma had sent those tips, late at night, from a computer at the public library, using an email address that could never be traced back to her. Sarah was relentless, digging deeper than anyone expected. She made phone calls, requested documents, showed up at board meetings with uncomfortable questions. Within weeks, the story broke. Minor at first, just questions about accounting practices. The kind of story that gets buried on page 6 and forgotten by the next news cycle. But it was enough to make the board nervous, enough to trigger an internal audit, enough to make Vivian spend 3 hours on the phone with her lawyers instead of planning her next gala. Emma watched the news coverage from her small apartment, the twins asleep in the next room, and felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The first domino had fallen, the others would follow. The second domino was worse than Emma could have imagined. 3 months after the story broke, just as Emma was starting to believe she might actually win this, Grant filed for full custody of the twins. The legal documents arrived on a Tuesday morning. Emma opened the envelope expecting routine paperwork, maybe something about visitation schedules or child support calculations. Instead, she found 47 pages of character assassination. The documents claimed Emma was unstable, mentally ill, incapable of providing a safe environment. They twisted everything she had survived into evidence of failure. Her time in the women's shelter became homelessness and inability to provide stable housing. Her grief after her mother's death became psychiatric concerns requiring professional evaluation. Her part-time job became evidence of financial instability and inability to meet basic needs. They even used her mother's death against her. They claimed Ruth's health problems were hereditary, that Emma herself might be at risk for cardiac events, that the children deserved a more stable environment. The Westons were not just trying to take her children, they were trying to erase her, to make it look like she had never been a good mother. Like giving the twins to them was an act of mercy. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Emma spent those 3 weeks preparing like her life depended on it, because it did. She gathered character witnesses, Pastor Linda, her supervisor at the law firm, the daycare teachers who had watched her with the twins, Maria, who was willing to testify about what she had seen in the Weston household. She documented everything. Every diaper she changed, every doctor's appointment she kept, every milestone the twins hit under her care. She created a binder 4 inches thick, full of evidence that she was a good mother. It was not enough. The custody hearing was brutal. Vivian's lawyers were sharks in expensive suits, turning Emma's every decision into evidence of failure. They brought in expert witnesses, Psychologists who had never met Emma but had plenty of opinions about her mental state. Financial analysts who explained in detail how Emma's income was insufficient for raising children. The judge listened with a neutral expression that gave nothing away. She was in her 50s, gray-haired, with the weary look of someone who had heard every story and believed none of them. "Mrs. Callahan," the judge said finally, "you are working part-time while raising twin infants alone. You have limited family support and modest financial resources. You live in a two-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with above-average crime rates. Help me understand how this arrangement is in the children's best interest." Emma looked at Marcus. He shook his head slightly. This was not going well, but Emma had not come this far to give up. She had not survived Christmas Eve and her mother's death in the shelter and the loneliness to surrender now. She took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "Your Honor, I may not have the resources the Westons have. I cannot offer my children nannies or estates or trust funds. I cannot send them to private schools or buy them designer clothes or take them on European vacations. But I can offer them something more valuable, something money cannot buy." She paused, feeling the tears building but refusing to let them fall. "I can offer them a mother who will never give up, who will work 3 jobs if that is what it takes, who will fight every single day to give them a life filled with love instead of manipulation, who will teach them that their worth is not measured by their bank account or their last name or the size of their house, who will show them by example that you can be knocked down 100 times and still get back up." The room was silent. Even the Weston lawyers had stopped whispering. "The Weston family threw me out on Christmas Eve when I was 7 months pregnant with their grandchildren. They refused to help when my mother was dying. They have spent my entire marriage trying to make me feel worthless. But I am not worthless, and my children deserve better than a family that sees them as assets to be managed instead of human beings to be loved." She looked directly at the judge, woman to woman. "Your Honor, I am not perfect. I have made mistakes. I trusted people I should not have trusted. I believed in a fairy tale that turned out to be a nightmare. But I have never, not for one single second, stopped loving my children or fighting for their future. Can the Westons say the same?" The room was silent. The judge made her decision. Temporary custody granted to the Weston family, with supervised visitation for the mother pending a full psychiatric evaluation. Emma heard the words but did not process them at first. They seemed to come from very far away, like someone speaking underwater. Then the meaning hit her. Temporary custody. The Westons. They were taking her children. Emma's world collapsed for the second time, and this time she was not sure she could survive it. The apartment felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. It was not the silence. Emma had gotten used to silence during the long nights at the shelter. It was not the loneliness. She had been lonely since the moment Grant handed her those divorce papers. It was the absence, the specific, physical, unbearable absence of 2 small bodies who should have been there and were not. The twins' cribs were still there. Their mobiles still hung above them, musical toys that played lullabies no one was listening to. Their clothes were still in the drawers, tiny onesies and soft pajamas folded with the care Emma had taken in everything involving her children. Their toys were scattered across the floor where Emma had left them, expecting to pick them up after the hearing. She had told them she would be right back. "Mommy just has to go talk to some people, and then I will be home, and we will play." She had not come back. Not the same way she left. 3 days passed, or maybe 4. Time lost meaning when your children were gone. Emma did not eat, did not sleep, did not shower or change clothes or check her phone. She just sat in the rocking chair where she used to nurse the twins, holding one of Lily's stuffed animals, breathing in the fading scent of her daughter's hair. She thought about dying, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that required planning or action, just in a passive, exhausted way. Like maybe if she stopped eating and drinking and breathing, the pain would stop too. It would be easier, a voice whispered in her head. Easier to just let go. They have your children. They have everything. What is left to fight for? But another voice answered, her mother's voice. Quiet and fierce the way Ruth had always been. You get up, that is what you do. You get up and you fight, and you do not stop until those babies are back in your arms. You did not survive this much to quit now. Emma closed her eyes and held on to that voice like a lifeline. A knock at the door startled her back to reality. "Mrs. Callahan?" A man's voice. Concerned but professional. "I am Deputy Daniel Reyes. I investigated the break-in at your previous residence last month. Your neighbors called. They said your lights have been on for 3 days straight and they have not seen you leave your apartment." Emma opened the door slowly. She caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror and winced. She looked like a ghost. Pale. Hollow. The kind of woman you cross the street to avoid. Daniel Reyes was in his mid-30s, with dark hair going gray at the temples and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by hers. He was not in uniform, off-duty. He had come here on his own time. "Mrs. Callahan." He said her name gently, like she was something fragile that might break. "You look like you have not eaten in a while. Can I come in?" She stepped aside, too exhausted to argue. Daniel walked into the apartment slowly, taking it in. The empty cribs, the scattered toys, the woman who had clearly stopped functioning. His expression softened with understanding that could only come from personal experience. "I lost custody of my daughter for 6 months after my divorce," he said quietly. He did not sit down, did not invade her space, just stood there, solid and present, like an anchor in a storm. "My ex had better lawyers, painted me as unstable, said my job was too dangerous for primary custody. I went 6 months seeing my daughter for 2 hours every Saturday in a room with a social worker watching." Emma looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "How did you survive that?" "I did not," he said honestly. "Not at first. I drank. I stopped showing up for work. I sat in my apartment just like you are sitting here, wondering what the point was. What changed? A friend told me something I did not want to hear. He said my daughter needed me fighting, not surrendering. That every day I spent falling apart was a day I was not building the case to get her back. That the best thing I could do for her was become the kind of man no judge could deny." Emma felt something crack inside her. The numbness that had protected her for 3 days giving way to something sharper, more dangerous. "How do you keep going when you have nothing left?" Daniel met her eyes. "You have yourself, and whatever put that fire in your eyes before they took it." He paused. "I saw you at the shelter, months ago. You did not see me. I was there on a call. But I watched you with those babies, the way you held them, the way you looked at them. That was not nothing, Mrs. Callahan. That was everything." Emma's eyes filled with tears for the first time in 3 days. They spilled over and ran down her cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. "I do not know how to fight them. They have money, they have lawyers, they have power. What do I have? You have the truth," Daniel said, "and you have something they will never have. Those children know you love them. They feel it. That kind of love does not disappear just because a judge says so. You fight for them, you build your case, you become undeniable, and you do not stop until they are home." He left his card on the kitchen table and walked to the door. Then he paused, looking back at her. "For what it is worth," he said, "my daughter is 12 now. She lives with me. Full custody. It took 2 years, but I got her back. And every day I wake up grateful that I did not give up when everything seemed hopeless." He let himself out. Emma stared at the card for a long time. Deputy Daniel Reyes, a phone number. A simple piece of paper that represented something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. She picked up her phone and called Marcus. "I need the file," she said. Her voice sounded different, harder, the voice of a woman who had stopped crying and started calculating. "The one my mother left. The break glass file. I need everything." There was a long pause. "Emma, are you sure you are ready for this? Once you open that file, there is no going back. You will know things you cannot unknow, and you will have to decide what you are willing to do with that knowledge." Emma looked at the empty cribs, at the toys on the floor, at the life that had been ripped away from her. "They took my children, Marcus. They took them and gave them to a woman who kills people who get in her way. I am ready for war." The break glass file changed everything. Ruth Callahan had not just investigated the Westons. She had uncovered their darkest secrets. The skeletons they thought were buried so deep no one would ever find them. Emma spread the documents across her kitchen table, working through them systematically, the way Marcus had taught her. Some were originals, some were copies, Some were photographs of documents that Ruth had somehow accessed and returned before anyone noticed they were missing. Her mother had been thorough, meticulous, patient, and she had found everything. The first revelation made Emma's hands shake so badly she had to set down the papers. Vivian had killed her own husband. Richard Weston's death 10 years ago had been ruled a heart attack. Natural causes. A tragedy, the newspaper said. A great man taken too soon. But Ruth had found a witness. The family doctor, William Foster, who had been paid off to falsify the death certificate. He had watched Vivian switch Richard's heart medication. He had documented the time of death, knowing the real cause was murder. He had signed papers and taken money and carried the guilt for a decade. Now he was dying. Cancer, stage 4, eating him from the inside out. He was in hospice care, too weak to walk but not too weak to talk. And he was willing to testify before it was too late. The second revelation was even worse. The Weston fortune was built on theft. Grant's grandfather, Harold Weston, had stolen patents from a black inventor named Charles Thompson in 1962. Thompson had developed revolutionary construction techniques that would become the foundation of the Weston Empire. He had brought them to Harold as a business partner. Harold had stolen everything. The patents, the plans, the innovations. He had used his connections to have Thompson blacklisted from the industry. When Thompson tried to sue, Harold's lawyers buried him in motions and delays until he ran out of money to fight. Charles Thompson died broke in 1978, watching the Westons build skyscrapers with his ideas while he could not afford to feed his family. But his granddaughter, Grace Thompson, was still alive. She was 67 now, a retired school teacher who had spent her entire life knowing her family had been robbed and having no way to prove it. Ruth had found the proof. Original documents, signed agreements, letters between Harold and his lawyers discussing how to steal from Thompson without getting caught. 60 years of injustice, documented in black and white. The third revelation made Emma sit back in her chair and stare at the ceiling for a long time. Chelsea Morgan was Vivian's biological daughter, given up for adoption when Vivian was 19. A secret pregnancy hidden from everyone. A baby handed over to strangers because Vivian's family would not tolerate the scandal. But Vivian had kept track, had watched from a distance as Chelsea grew up in poverty, hungry and desperate, the perfect combination of smart and needy that Vivian could exploit. When Chelsea was 18, Vivian had made contact, not as her mother, as a benefactor, a wealthy woman who wanted to help a promising young woman succeed. Chelsea had been recruited, trained, molded into a weapon. She did not even know the full truth. She had been told she was special, chosen, a protege being groomed for great things. She had no idea she was being used by the mother who had abandoned her. Emma read through the files 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of corruption and cruelty. The Westons were not just bad people, they were monsters wearing expensive masks. And they had her children. My mother knew all of this, Emma said to Marcus during their phone call that night. For how long? She started investigating when you got engaged, Marcus replied. She never trusted them. She said something felt wrong the way Grant pursued you. Too fast, too perfect. She started digging, and she did not like what she found. Why did she not just tell me? Because you would not have believed her. You loved Grant. You thought she was being overprotective. If she had shown you this file before the wedding, you would have thought she was trying to sabotage your happiness. Emma closed her eyes. She was right. I would have thought exactly that. She knew you would need to see the truth yourself, to experience their cruelty firsthand. She said Emma has to fall before she can fly. I cannot stop the fall, but I can give her wings for after. Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Her mother had watched her suffer, knowing she could end it at any time, knowing a single phone call could change everything. But Ruth had understood something Emma was only now beginning to grasp. Some lessons cannot be taught. They can only be learned through pain. And the strength Emma needed to defeat the Westons could only come from being destroyed by them first. I miss you, Mom, Emma whispered into the darkness of her empty apartment. But I understand now. I understand everything. The counterattack began the next morning. Emma contacted the dying doctor first. William Foster was in a hospice facility in Connecticut, breathing through tubes, counting the days until his body finally gave up. But his mind was still sharp, and his guilt was still heavy. I watched her do it, he admitted, his voice thin and raspy. They were in his room, monitors beeping, the smell of antiseptic and approaching death heavy in the air. She switched his medication, made it look natural. I knew what she was doing, and I said nothing because she paid me $200,000 to keep my mouth shut while a man died. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Emma wince. I have been carrying that weight for 10 years. I have nightmares every night. Richard Weston looking at me, asking why I let him die. I told myself I would take the secret to my grave. But now that the grave is actually coming, I realized I cannot face God with this on my conscience. Please, let me make it right before I go. Emma recorded every word, had him sign a sworn statement witnessed by his hospice chaplain, documented everything with the thoroughness her mother had taught her. She contacted Grace Thompson next. Grace lived in a small house in Baltimore, surrounded by pictures of her grandfather and the family he had never been able to provide for. She had spent 60 years fighting for justice that never came. My grandfather died broke, Grace said, her voice heavy with decades of pain. He watched the Westons get rich off his ideas while he could not afford medicine for my grandmother. He had a heart attack at 57, probably from the stress of knowing he had been robbed and could not prove it. This is not just about money, Mrs. Callahan. This is about justice that is 60 years overdue. Emma showed her the documents Ruth had found, the original agreements, the stolen patents, the letters proving Harold Weston knew exactly what he was doing. Grace held the papers with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. My grandfather tried to tell people. For years he tried to tell people, but no one believed him. Who was going to take the word of a black man against the Westons? She looked at Emma. Your mother found all this? She spent years looking. She believed your grandfather deserved justice. And so do I. Grace Thompson agreed to join the lawsuit Emma was building. 60 years of stolen wealth, millions of dollars that should have gone to the Thompson family, interest and damages that would devastate what remained of the Weston Empire. Finally, Emma contacted a private investigator to verify the connection between Chelsea and Vivian. DNA evidence, adoption records, everything documented, everything verified, everything ready to use. The pieces were falling into place. But Emma had learned something important during her months in the darkness. Revenge was not enough. Pastor Linda was right. Revenge would destroy her as surely as it destroyed the Westons. She did not just want them to suffer. She wanted them to understand. She wanted them to feel every ounce of pain they had inflicted, multiplied and concentrated and delivered with surgical precision. But more than that, she wanted them stopped. She wanted to make sure they could never do this to another woman, another family, another person naive enough to believe their lies. Most importantly, she wanted her children back. So instead of striking immediately, she waited, gathered more evidence, built relationships with federal investigators who were looking into the foundation fraud, cultivated sources inside the Weston organization who were tired of covering up crimes. And she prepared for the battle that would determine everything. The war had begun, and Emma Callahan was finally ready to fight. 6 months after losing custody, Emma finally saw light at the end of the tunnel. The federal investigation into the Weston Foundation was gaining momentum. 3 board members had resigned under pressure. The Weston stock price was quietly bleeding, and Grant's gambling debts had spiraled to a point where even Vivian could not ignore them anymore. Emma had positioned herself perfectly. Her shell companies now controlled significant stakes in several Weston-affiliated businesses. Her evidence file was thick enough to bury them all, and her custody lawyer had filed a motion to reopen the case based on documented financial instability and criminal activity in the Weston household. Everything was finally coming together. Then Grant called. Emma stared at her phone, seeing his name flash across the screen for the first time in nearly a year. She almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. Emma. His voice sounded different, hollow, broken. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. Please, just hear me out. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. My mother controlled everything and I was too weak to stop her. But I am getting out. I wanted to help you. I want to be a real father. Emma's breath caught. Why now? Why after everything? Because I am losing everything anyway, Grant said quietly, and I realized too late what actually mattered. You, the kids. having something real instead of all this poison. Help me escape, and I will help you destroy her. How do I know this is not another manipulation? You do not. But I can prove my intentions. I have evidence. Bank records showing my mother's fraud. Recordings of her admitting to the Chelsea scheme. Everything you would need to take her down. Emma's mind raced. This could be real. Grant had always been weak, not evil. A coward who went along with whatever his mother wanted because standing up was too hard. Maybe losing everything had finally woken him up. Or maybe it was a trap. Bring the evidence, Emma said carefully. I will look at it. But this does not change what you did to me. It does not fix anything. I know, Grant said. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to do one thing right before it all falls apart. They met the next day at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Grant looked terrible, gaunt and hollow, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He slid a flash drive across the table. Everything is on there. Bank transfers, recorded conversations, enough to put my mother in prison for 20 years. Emma took the drive, studying his face for any sign of deception. Why are you doing this? Because I had a dream last night about the twins. They were older, maybe 5 or 6, and they asked me why their daddy gave them away. Grant's voice cracked. I could not answer them. Even in my dream, I had no answer. And I realize that is my future if I do not change. I will be the father who threw his children away for money. I cannot live with that. Emma wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered the man she had fallen in love with, desperately wanted to believe this was real. I will review the evidence, she said finally. If it is legitimate, we can talk about next steps. Grant nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. That is all I am asking. A chance. Emma went home and plugged in the flash drive with trembling hands. The files opened smoothly. Bank records, audio files, documents, everything Grant had promised. She called Marcus immediately. I think I have it. I think I have enough to end this. She spent the next 3 days reviewing every file, verifying every document, preparing her case. The evidence was damning, undeniable, devastating. She felt for the first time in over a year something like hope. That hope died on a Friday morning at 7 a.m. when federal agents kicked in her door. Emma Callahan, the lead agent, held up a badge. FBI. You are under arrest for conspiracy to defraud, blackmail, and extortion. What? This is insane. I have not done anything. You have the right to remain silent. The agent continued mechanically as his partner pulled her arms behind her back. Anything you say can and will be used against you. They cuffed her in her own kitchen, next to the cribs that still held her children's blankets. They marched her outside, where news cameras were already waiting. And standing across the street, filming with her phone and wearing a satisfied smile, was Chelsea. Emma understood then. Grant's evidence had been fabricated. His confession had been a performance. The whole thing had been orchestrated to turn her own investigation into a criminal conspiracy. Vivian had turned Emma's weapons against her. The news coverage was brutal. Scorned ex-wife arrested for revenge plot. Jealous woman attempts to frame innocent family. The headlines painted Emma as unhinged, obsessed, dangerous. Everything she had built, every piece of evidence she had gathered, was now tainted by association with the fake materials Grant had provided. The federal investigators who had been pursuing Vivian now saw Emma as a co-conspirator. Her custody case was dead. Her reputation was destroyed, and her children were further away than ever. They had won. Or so they thought. Emma sat in a county jail cell, staring at concrete walls that seemed to close in a little more each hour. She could not make bail. Vivian had ensured her assets were frozen. Marcus was fighting, but the legal process moved slowly, and every day felt like a year. The worst part was not the cell or the terrible food or the noise that never stopped. The worst part was knowing her children were with people who saw them as pawns. Growing up in that house of poison. Learning to be Westons. On her 5th day inside, Marcus came to visit. His face was grim, but something in his eyes looked different, determined. We are in trouble, he said through the glass partition, but we are not out. Your mother left one more thing, a final file. I could not give it to you before. Her instructions were specific. Only if everything else fails. Only if Emma is about to lose. Emma leaned forward. What is in it? The truth. All of it. And contacts. People your mother cultivated for years. Law enforcement. International investigators. Witnesses who have been waiting for this moment. Why did she not tell me earlier? Because you needed to try to win the right way first. She knew you would not take shortcuts unless you had no other choice. She said Emma believes in fairness. She will not become the monster unless she absolutely has to. I have to give her the chance to win clean first. Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Even now, even after everything, her mother was still protecting her, still believing in her, still fighting for her. Tell me everything, Emma said. The final file was a masterpiece of preparation. Ruth had spent years cultivating relationships with the people who could bring the Westons down. International banking regulators who had been tracking the offshore accounts. IRS investigators who suspected tax fraud but lacked the evidence to act. Even a retired FBI agent who had worked organized crime and owed Ruth a favor from decades ago. More importantly, Ruth had documented everything independently. Her own copies of every financial irregularity, her own recordings of witnesses, evidence that could not be tainted by Grant's fabricated materials because it came from a completely different source, and she had left detailed instructions for how to use it all. Step 1, Marcus explained, reading from Ruth's notes. Establish that the evidence against Emma was fabricated. Grant provided falsified documents designed to entrap her. We prove that, and the criminal case falls apart. How do we prove it? Metadata analysis. The documents Grant gave you were created after the dates they claim to represent. Digital forensics can prove they are fake. Your mother anticipated this exact scenario. She even recommended specific experts to use. Step 2 was more complex. Coordinate with the legitimate investigators Ruth had identified. Share the authentic evidence through proper channels. Let the real investigation proceed without Emma's fingerprints on it. Step 3 was the final blow. Reveal Vivian's murder of her husband. The dying doctor, William Foster, had provided a sworn statement before his death. Combined with medical records Ruth had obtained through sources in the hospital, it was enough to reopen the case. This will work, Marcus said, but it is going to take time. Months, maybe longer. The wheels of justice grind slowly. I do not have months, Emma said. My children are with that woman. Every day they spend there, she is poisoning them against me. I know. But if we rush this, if we cut corners, we risk losing everything again. Your mother spent years preparing this because she knew the only way to beat the Westons was to be more patient than they were. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her mother's strategy settling over her like a mantle. Patience, strategy, precision. Everything Ruth had taught her without ever saying the words directly. Okay, Emma said finally, we do it her way. We do it right. The plan went into motion. Digital forensics experts analyzed Grant's evidence and confirmed what Emma already knew. The documents were fabricated, created weeks after the dates they claimed to represent. Metadata timestamps were impossible to fake, and they told a clear story of deception. Emma's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss based on fabricated evidence. The prosecutors, faced with undeniable proof that their key evidence was fraudulent, had no choice but to drop the charges. Emma walked out of jail after 11 days, thinner and exhausted, but unbroken. The real battle had just begun. Over the next 4 months, the legitimate investigation accelerated. Federal agents who had been reluctant to pursue the Westons now saw the full picture. The authentic evidence Ruth had gathered proved the foundation fraud beyond any doubt. The IRS opened a formal investigation into tax evasion, and the state police reopened the investigation into Richard Weston's death. Chelsea was the first to crack. Confronted with DNA evidence proving Vivian was her biological mother and facing accessory charges for her role in Emma's false arrest, she made a choice. She flipped. So wait, Chelsea said during her debriefing, her voice hollow. I destroyed my best friend's marriage to marry my own brother? Half-brother, Emma said flatly. If that helps. It does not help, Emma. It really does not. Chelsea provided everything. Years of recordings, emails between her and Vivian, documents proving the conspiracy against Emma had been planned for years. In exchange for full cooperation, She received immunity and witness protection. Grant crumbled next. The gambling debts had finally caught up. Dangerous people were circling. His mother refused to help, too busy fighting her own legal battles. He had nowhere to turn. He came to Emma one last time, desperate and broken. "I did not know about my mother," he said, "about my father, about any of it. I am not a monster, Emma. I am just weak." "I know, Grant," Emma replied. "That is the tragedy. You were never evil. You just never had the courage to be good." Grant testified against his mother in exchange for a reduced sentence on the embezzlement charges. Probation instead of prison. A chance to rebuild. Emma almost felt sorry for him, almost. The case against Vivian Weston was overwhelming. Charity fraud, tax evasion, murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The list of charges filled pages, each one carrying enough weight to end a lesser person. But Vivian was not a lesser person. She was a fighter, and she had one final card to play. On the morning Emma was scheduled to regain custody of her children, she received a text from an unknown number. "Come to the estate, alone, or watch live as I take them somewhere you will never find them." Emma's blood ran cold. She called Daniel Reyes immediately. He had become a constant presence over the past months, a friend who understood her battle because he had fought his own. They were not romantic, not yet, but there was something there, a possibility waiting to bloom when the war was finally over. "She is desperate," Daniel said. "Desperate people make mistakes. We need to handle this carefully. She has my children, and we will get them back, but not by walking into a trap. Let me make some calls. We have allies. Your mother made sure of that." The next 12 hours were the longest of Emma's life. Daniel coordinated with federal agents. Marcus worked the legal angle. Pastor Linda organized a prayer vigil at the church. Every person Emma had touched over the past 2 years mobilized to bring her children home. And Ruth's network, the connections she had cultivated over 30 years, proved invaluable once again. International law enforcement tracked Vivian's private plane to a small airport in Colorado. She had been planning to flee to Switzerland, to a country with banking secrecy laws that would have protected her for years. She never made it. Federal agents intercepted the plane on the runway. Vivian was arrested in front of her own pilot, handcuffed in the same elegant pearls she had worn the night she threw Emma into the snow. The twins were found safe in the back of the plane, confused but unharmed. A child psychologist determined they had not been hurt, just scared. Emma held them for the first time in months, sobbing into their hair, whispering promises she would spend the rest of her life keeping. "You are safe now," she told them. "Mama is here. Mama is never letting go again." Vivian's trial was the media event of the decade. Emma attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Marcus on one side and Daniel on the other. She watched as witness after witness testified to the cruelty she had experienced firsthand. The dying doctor's video deposition was played for the jury. Vivian's face remained impassive as her husband's murder was described in clinical detail. Grace Thompson testified about her grandfather's stolen patents, about the legacy of theft the Weston Empire was built upon. 60 years of injustice, finally receiving its day in court. Chelsea testified about the conspiracy to destroy Emma. Her voice shook, but she held firm, describing years of manipulation and deception. And Emma testified about Christmas Eve, about the divorce papers, about the twins, about every moment of cruelty she had endured at Vivian's hands. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Vivian Weston was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. She would die there, everyone knew. A fitting end for a woman who had destroyed so many lives. After the verdict, Emma asked for one final meeting. The judge granted it, supervised, in a holding room at the courthouse. Vivian sat across from her, still elegant despite the prison jumpsuit, still radiating contempt despite her defeat. "Your mother was just like me," Vivian said, ruthless, strategic. The only difference is she was clever enough to hide it behind kindness. "No," Emma replied calmly. "The difference is she used her power to protect. You used yours to destroy. That is not the same thing. When those children grow up and realize how hard this world is, they will understand what I tried to give them, maybe. But they will learn it from someone who loves them, not someone who owns them. That is the thing you never understood about mothers like mine. We are not building dynasties. We are building people. Emma stood up to leave. Vivian called after her. You think you have won, but the world I created still exists. The rules still favor people like me. You have not changed anything. Emma paused at the door and turned back one final time. I changed everything, she said, for the only people who matter. She walked away and did not look back. 1 year later, Emma stood on the porch of a modest home in Columbus, watching her children play in the backyard. The house was nothing special by Weston standards. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a kitchen that needed updating. But it was hers, a germ. Bought with her mother's money, renovated with her own hands, filled with a love that no mansion could contain. Jack was chasing Lily around the swing set, both of them shrieking with laughter. At 3 years old, they barely remembered the darkness that had preceded this light. Emma was grateful for that. Some things were better forgotten. Daniel's truck pulled into the driveway. His daughter Maya tumbled out first, a whirlwind of energy who had become like an older sister to the twins. Daniel followed more slowly, carrying a casserole dish and wearing the slightly bewildered expression of a man still adjusting to domesticity. Pastor Linda made her famous mac and cheese, he said, climbing the porch steps. I tried to steal some on the way over, but Maya caught me. You were a bad example, Emma laughed. The worst. But I brought food, so you have to forgive me. They were not married. Not yet. Some wounds took time to heal, and Emma was in no rush. But there was something there, something warm and patient and real, a possibility that grew stronger every day. Marcus arrived next, carrying a bottle of wine and a stack of papers. Even retired, he could not quite stop being a lawyer. Final reports, he said, the foundation assets have been fully distributed to legitimate charities. Grace Thompson received her settlement, and Chelsea has been relocated to somewhere safe. How is she? Struggling, but trying. She has a lot to work through, Emma nodded. She still could not forgive Chelsea. Maybe she never would. But she understood, in a way she had not before, how easily a person could be shaped by circumstances beyond their control. Grant sent a letter, Marcus added. He is in therapy, asking if he can have supervised visits with the twins someday. Emma was quiet for a moment. Maybe. When he has proven he has actually changed. But not yet. They deserve stability right now. They deserve peace, right? The afternoon passed in easy contentment. The children played. The adults laughed. For a few hours, the past felt truly past. As the sun began to set, Marcus pulled Emma aside. I have one more thing, he said. Your mother left instructions. This was supposed to be delivered exactly 1 year after the case closed. He handed her an envelope. Simple. White. Unremarkable. Emma's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter in her mother's familiar handwriting. My sweet girl, she read silently. If you are reading this, you survived. Not because of the money. Money is just tools. You survived because you are stronger than you know. I saw it when you were 5 and fell off your bike. You did not cry. You just got up and said, I am gonna learn this stupid thing. That is when I knew. That is when I started saving. Not because I thought you would fail, because I knew when you got knocked down, you would need resources to get back up and fight. I am sorry I could not be there. Sorry I had to watch from a distance while you suffered. It was the hardest thing I ever did, staying silent when I wanted to rush in and save you. But you did not need saving, Emma. You needed space to save yourself, and you did. You are magnificent. I am so proud of you. Prouder than I ever told you when I was alive. You are the best thing I ever did. The only thing that truly mattered. Now stop reading letters from your dead mother and go live your life. Kiss those babies for me. Find someone who deserves you. Build something beautiful. I will be watching. I always was. All my love, forever and beyond. Mom. Emma sat on the porch steps, tears streaming down her face. The letter pressed against her heart. Mom, are you okay? She looked up. Jack stood in front of her, his small face creased with concern. Lily hovered behind him, uncertain. Emma pulled them both into her arms, holding them so tight they squealed. I am okay, baby. I am better than okay. I am happy. Why are you crying then? Because sometimes happy makes you cry too. You will understand when you are older. Adults are weird, Lily observed. Emma laughed through her tears. Yes, baby. Yes, we are. The sun set over Columbus, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Emma sat on her porch, surrounded by the people she loved, watching her children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. She thought about everything she had lost: her marriage, her best friend, her mother, years of her life spent fighting battles she never asked for. But she also thought about everything she had gained: strengths she did not know she possessed, allies who believed in her when she could not believe in herself, a future that was truly her own, and most importantly, two small miracles who called her mama and made every sacrifice worth it. The news would move on. There would be new scandals, new tragedies, new stories to consume. The Weston name would fade from headlines, replaced by whatever fresh outrage captured the public's attention next. But Emma would remember. She would remember the woman who had believed in her from the beginning. The mother who had spent 30 years preparing for a battle she prayed would never come. The love that transcended death and reached across time to save her. People ask me if I got revenge, Emma would say years later, when reporters came to interview her about her nonprofit helping women escape financial abuse. I tell them no. Revenge is when you destroy someone. Justice is when the truth destroys them. I just told the truth. They destroyed themselves. She would pause then, thinking of her mother, of Ruth's patient wisdom and fierce love. And I had help, she would add, from the best person I have ever known. She is gone now, but she is still with me. Every day, in everything I do, the nonprofit would grow. Thousands of women would find safety and strength through its programs. Emma would speak at conferences, testify before legislators, fight for laws protecting vulnerable families. She would never remarry, though Daniel would remain her partner in every way that mattered. Some wounds heal better with patience than with ceremony. Jack and Lily would grow up healthy and happy, knowing nothing of their father's family except what Emma chose to tell them. They would learn about their grandmother Ruth, about the sacrifices she made, about the love that protected them before they were even born. And on quiet evenings, Emma would sit on her porch and watch the fireflies dance. And she would feel her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder, and she would smile. The Westons had tried to destroy her. They had humiliated her, impoverished her, stolen her children, framed her for crimes she did not commit. But they had not understood something fundamental about Emma Callahan. She was her mother's daughter, and that meant she was unbreakable. And that is Emma's story, a story about betrayal and survival, about a mother's love that reached beyond the grave, about finding strength you never knew you had. Now I need to ask you something. If this story moved you, if you felt something while listening, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for the next person who needs to hear a story like this at 2 a.m. when they feel like giving up. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done on that Christmas Eve? Would you have signed in those papers? Would you have fought back? I read every single comment, and I want to know your thoughts. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. A friend going through a hard time. A sister who feels stuck. Sometimes the right story at the right moment can change everything. And if you made it this far, type the word unbreakable in the comments. Let me see how many of us stayed until the very end. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time.